You probably think you own a printer. You don't. You've just subscribed to a very, very expensive liquid delivery service. That little plastic box on your desk is a fancy gate, and the toll to pass through it is paid in ink. And that ink, drop for drop, can be one of the most expensive fluids you'll ever buy. More than a lot of fine wines, more than designer perfume, and yes, even more than some vintage champagnes. How on earth did this happen? Let's be clear. That more than champagne line isn't just a catchy phrase. It's shockingly real. Consumer Reports has clocked the price of common inkjet ink anywhere from $13 to $75 per ounce. That's a range of roughly $440 to over $2,500 per liter. Let's put that in perspective. A $30 ink cartridge might give you 12 milliliters of ink. That's $2.50 per milliliter. A nice celebratory $150 bottle of vintage bubbly? That works out to about 20 cents per milliliter. The ink is literally more than 10 times pricier. So, is the ink made of unicorn tears and gold dust? Nope. The secret isn't in the chemistry. It's in a classic business model that's over a century old, the razor and blades model. The story goes that King Gillette figured out you could sell the razor handle for cheap, maybe even at a loss, because you knew the customer was locked into buying your proprietary, high-margin blades forever. Printer companies just perfected the strategy for the digital age. The printer itself is the cheap handle. The ink is the blade you'll be buying over and over and over again. You can see this trap laid out on any store shelf. You'll find a perfectly capable home inkjet printer for $70, maybe $60 on sale. A fantastic deal. But look right next to it. A full set of standard, brand-name ink cartridges for that exact same printer can easily cost $40 to $80. You can literally spend more on your first refill than you did on the entire machine. And those starter cartridges that come in the box, they're often only half full, holding just 5 to 10 milliliters, ensuring you'll be back at the store very, very soon. But wait, why can't you just buy cheaper ink from someone else? That's where the digital part of the playbook comes in. They build a toll booth right into the machine. Modern cartridges have tiny microchips that act like a key. When you slide a cartridge in, the chip talks to the printer, confirming it's an authentic, approved product. Some brands also use region codes, just like old DVDs. If you move from Europe to North America and bring your printer, the local cartridges might not work until you get support to remotely change your printer's region. It's a digital fence to keep you in their yard. Sometimes that digital fence gets built after you already bought the printer. In September 2016, thousands of HP printer owners woke up one morning to find their machines refusing to print. The error message? Cartridge problem. These users hadn't done anything wrong. They were just using less expensive third-party ink cartridges that had worked perfectly the day before. It turned out a pre-scheduled firmware update called Dynamic Security had activated overnight, blacklisting unapproved chips. After a huge public outcry, HP apologized and released optional firmware to reverse the change on some models. It was a perfect demonstration of digital rights management, or DRM, for liquids. The latest evolution of the model is the ink subscription, like HP's Instant Ink. It's a clever psychological trick. Instead of a big, painful $50 purchase every few months, you pay a small, predictable fee every month. But here's the Sneakanomics twist. You're not paying for ink anymore. You're paying per page. This leads to a truly bizarre economic reality where physics no longer matters. Think about it. Print a dense, glossy, full-color photo that uses tons of ink. In a subscription, that counts as one page. Now print a single line of text, a haiku about your cat. That also counts as one page. The meter only cares about the page count, not the pigment used. But the biggest surprise comes if you decide to cancel. The moment your subscription ends, the special instant ink cartridges already in your printer will be remotely deactivated and stop working. Even if they're completely full of ink you've technically paid for. The printer checks in online, sees your plan is canceled, and digitally shuts the valve. Once you see this pattern, you see it everywhere. It's the coffee machine that's always on sale, because the real money is in the proprietary pods. It's the video game console sold at a loss, because the profits come from licensing every $10 sliver of downloadable content. The initial product is just the key to an ecosystem of profitable consumables. The printer is just the most blatant, measurable version of this. It's a cheap gate, and the toll is calculated per page. The reason it's so measurable is because of globally agreed upon standards. A set of ISO tests defines exactly what counts as a page for testing purposes. Manufacturers use a suite of 5 standard documents, printed continuously until the ink runs out, to calculate the page yield you see on the box. This allows them to create incredibly precise financial models. They know, on average, how many pages a household prints per month and can forecast their high-margin ink revenue with startling accuracy. So for the company, their revenue stream is predictable and smooth. For you, it can feel like having a slot machine in your study. Every time you need to print a concert ticket or a homework assignment, you pull the lever, a page comes out, and some unknown quantity of your very expensive liquid gold disappears. You just hope the low ink warning doesn't start flashing. Quick mid-show nudge. If you're enjoying this look at the hidden economics of everyday things, hit that subscribe button. It's free, and it ensures you won't miss our next story about the weird money logic hiding in plain sight. But here is the most insidious part. The cost almost no one sees. The meter is running even when you're not printing. Inkjet printers work by spraying ink through microscopic nozzles on a printhead. If that ink dries, the nozzles clog, and the printer is useless. To prevent this, the printer automatically runs maintenance and cleaning cycles, especially after it's been sitting idle. It does this by squirting a small amount of ink through the heads to keep them clear. That small amount of ink isn't imaginary. It's your ink, the ink you paid for. This purged ink goes into a hidden waste absorber inside the printer. Users on tech forums have documented how these silent sips can drain cartridges over time. You could go on vacation for a month, print 0 pages, and come back to find your ink levels mysteriously lower. It's a quiet tax just for owning the machine. This also explains why you never seem to get the number of pages promised on the box. Remember those ISO page yields? They're based on continuous printing in a lab. Your life isn't a lab. You print a page today, another in 3 days, and then nothing for a week. Each time you start up, you might trigger a small cleaning cycle. And if you print photos instead of simple text, you could be using 10 times more ink per page than the standard test documents. The official yield is the absolute best-case scenario, one you'll almost never achieve. For years, it seemed like the manufacturers held all the cards. But there has been pushback. In 2017, a case between a cartridge remanufacturer and Lexmark went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. The court ruled in favor of what's called patent exhaustion. In simple terms, it means once a company sells you a patented product, they can't use patent law to control what you do with it afterwards. You can resell it, refill it, or rebuild it. This was a huge victory for the third-party and refurbished cartridge market. Regulators have also started paying attention. In 2020, Italy's competition authority fined HP for not being clear enough with customers that firmware updates could block non-original cartridges. The issue wasn't the blocking itself, but the lack of transparency about it. Across the world, consumer groups are pushing for more honest labeling and the right to repair, which includes the right to use whatever ink you want. The walls of the garden are starting to show some cracks. But the biggest crack came from inside the industry itself. Faced with decades of customer frustration, some companies decided to try a rebellion. In 2015, Epson launched its EcoTank line, and other brands followed with their own SuperTank printers. The concept completely flipped the razor and blades model on its head. Instead of a cheap printer and expensive ink, this was an expensive printer with ridiculously cheap ink. The upfront cost was several $100s, a shock for consumers used to $70 printers. But early ads boasted of having 2 years of ink in the box. Instead of tiny cartridges, you got big bottles of ink to pour into tanks on the side of the printer. The math was staggering. Suddenly, the cost per page, according to ISO yields, dropped from several cents down to fractions of a cent. Black and white prints could be as low as 0.2 cents, with color around 1 cent. And here's the most telling part. The same companies that for years had implicitly justified high cartridge prices because of research and development costs were now able to sell you bottled ink for pennies a page. This is the ultimate proof. The high price was never just about the cost of developing high-tech, clog-free, color-fast ink. It was, and always has been, about the business model you were locked into. So, what does this all mean for you, standing in the electronics aisle? It means you have to learn to read the inverted price signal. In the world of printers, cheap is expensive and expensive is cheap. The $60 printer isn't a bargain, it's the on-ramp to a very expensive toll road. The $300 tank printer isn't a luxury, it's you buying your way onto the freeway. Now, a few quick caveats to be fair. That per milliliter comparison to champagne isn't perfect, because a cartridge also contains a chip and sophisticated print nozzles. Subscription plan prices and rules are always changing, so check the latest terms. And of course, we've been talking about inkjets. Laser printers use toner powder and have their own different economic story. But for the average home user, the inkjet trap is the one to watch out for. So let's tie it all together with the real reveal. You never really bought a box that puts ink on paper. You bought a meter. The hardware is just a coin slot designed to monetize the act of printing. Once you see the printer as a meter that charges you per page, everything else snaps into focus. The chips, the firmware locks, the page-based subscriptions, and even the ghost in the machine that sips ink while you sleep. It's all just part of the meter. The unexpected implication is that the most frugal move is to spend more money up front. You pay a premium to buy the machine instead of just renting its pages forever. If this kind of hidden money logic is your thing, subscribe and let us know with a like. We've got more stories on why cinema popcorn, airline tickets, and even free apps cost what they do. Thanks for hanging out with Sneakanomics. See you next time.